Today we're going to start learning about rational function. So there's three steps to graph a rational function. One is determine if it's in px over qx form, and then you got to find the vertical asymptote and then the horizontal asymptote, or the VA and HA, and then you got to test points to figure out which direction it's going. So we have the function f of x equals 1 over x minus 2. So this is an example of a typical rational function. Is basically has to be in px and qx form, or it just has to be in a fraction. So you are going to get a vertical asymptote, right? Vertical. And you'll have a horizontal. This is not the horizontal of this graph. I'm just completely making it up. Give you an example. So you have a right side and a left side, and you got to figure out which way is it going to go. Is it going to go this way, that way? On the left side, is it going to go? So then you got to test points to go like this. Notice how this graph never touches the horizontal asymptotes. It gets really close, but it'll never touch it. Okay, so let's start graphing. So we have the function f of x equals 1 over x minus 2. So determine if it's in px and qx form. Check, it's in px and qx form. Now we got to find the vertical and horizontal asymptote. So let's find our vertical asymptote. To find the vertical asymptotes, you look at the denominator, which in our case is x minus 2, and then you just set that to 0, right? So v, I'm putting it on the left, is x minus 2, and then you set that to 0. And then you solve for x, which is really simple, add 2, right? So our VA is x equals 2. Okay, now we got to find our horizontal asymptote. For the horizontal asymptote, you got to look for the denominator and numerator. And then you got to look at the highest degree. So the numerator doesn't have a degree, right? It just has a number. But the denominator has an x minus 2. But we look at the x, and since the top doesn't have a degree, we call this bottom heavy. And in the case, when it's always bottom heavy, you just set it's always 0. So in other rational functions, you'll have like where the degrees are the same, and then in that case you look at the coefficient, and then sometimes you'll have what's called a top heavy, and I'll do that I'll show that in another video. And then basically your horizontal is pretty much linear. So, but in this case, ours is just bottoms heavy, so y equals 0. Okay, next step, we found the VA and horizontal. Now let's graph our vertical and horizontal asymptotes. So here's x equals 2, so here's 2. And then you make that dashed line, right? And then over here, you can either y equals 0, so it should be right here, right? don't have to make the dashed line, but if you're new at it, you guess. So our vertical asymptote is y equals 0. So it'll never pass this point. It'll never go through this point. So notice how we have a right side and a left side. We got to figure out which way is it going to go on the right side. Is it going to go this way? Or is it going to go this way? We don't know, so we got to plug in points. So I can't use 2, right? Because it can't pass this point. So I will use 3. So I'm plugging in points, so our function, I'm going to plug in 3 into our function. So all you got to do is plug in 3 into the function. So f of 3 equals 1 over 3 minus 2. Right? So that's 1 over 1, right? Because 3 minus 2 is 1. So it's just 1. So in coordinate form, it would be, I like coordinate form because I need to know how to plot it. It'd be 3, 1. So I'm going to graph it, plot that point. So here's 3, here's 1, so it should go like this. So that point should go like this. Now you can add more points, but I don't want to. I already know how it looks like, so it's never going to pass the y, and it's never going to pass the x equals 2. So it's going to go, it'll get really close, but it'll never touch. Right? So that's how the right side looks like. Now let's look what the left side looks like. So I can't use 2, so I'm going to use positive 1. So I'm going to plug in f of 1 to the function. So here's 1. 1 minus 2. So that's 1 over 1 minus 2 is negative 1. So your answer is just your y value is negative 1. So in coordinate form, it'd be 1, comma, negative 1. Now I gotta plot it. Here's 1, negative 1. So I know it's never going to pass 0, right? So it will look something like this. And that's it. And that's how you graph a rational function when the horizontal is bottom heavy.